Welcome to Megabucks Radio. Conversations with successful entrepreneurs, sharing their tips and strategies for success. Real-world ideas that can put megabucks in your bank account. Here's your host, Nina Hirschberger.
Well, welcome to today's show. This is Nina Hirschberger, your host, and I am so excited to have one of my longtime clients, Rick Neiswonger, on the call today on the podcast. And Rick, when I was talking about it, when I was going to introduce Rick to my social media, I said he was the $5 million man. What you're going to know is Rick is much, much more than a $5 million man, but he's going to tell the story because I've asked him to about how just not too long ago, in 1 year, coast to coast, in 1 year, he sold 52 entrepreneurs to give him $100,000 to start a particular business. So, Rick, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Nina. Welcome as well. I thought back as to how you and I met, and it was a number of years ago at a Dan Kennedy super conference, and you were a vendor. And I stumbled across your little booth, and I was introduced to your magazine tear sheet. And I thought, wow, this has got to be one of the greatest little brochures I've ever seen. Why would anybody ever print a brochure when they can be on the cover of a magazine? And so we hit it off, and then I, of course, became a client. And since then, I think you've done 5 or 6 of those for me. I would not consider doing a marketing project without using that product of yours. So that was how we first met.
Well, you're very kind, and yes, I do distinctly remember that. And in fact, right in front of me, in my hand, I have a book that I helped Rick put together. He wrote it, so it's all his words and everything. And it's all of his years of experience put into this book. But it's so different that I just want to at least explain what it is, because it's all about why Rick is who he is. This is an 8.5 by 11. He said to me when he sent me a message, he said, Nina, I wanted 8.5 by 11. I wanted hardbound and spiral, so the binding is spiral. Well, I didn't know it. I didn't know any printer that did spiral hard binding. Fortunately, he was the one who found it. It was a cookbook printer. We helped put it together, and so sitting right here on my desk is one of the most unusual books I have ever seen. And that's kind of a summary of who Rick is. It's all about being unique. It's all about being different. Rick, I'm looking through this book, and it's your story, and then the experiences and the knowledge that you've gained. And you started out as an 8-year-old, and you knew that you never wanted to work for somebody else. You loved that sales and marketing, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I've always been in sales and marketing, and I guess I'm an old school guy. I'm an old guy, but, way back, I did not go to college. I remember, my senior year in high school, I was making $40,000 or $50,000 a year in sales, and that was 1969, 1970, and I said, I can't afford to go to college. Of course, now I tell my kids, you got to go to college. This was a whole different time, but I went right into sales and marketing, and I've never looked back, and I've been fortunate that I've been able to mentor with people like Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham and Gary Halbert. Gary Halbert and I go way back, and anyone on this call that knows these legends in marketing realize, just how great they were. And Ted Nicholas, and so many, many more. And I remember going to seminars and listening live dozens of times to Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar. So I've always been a good sales guy. And I always feel a salesman is never out of business, no matter how bad things are, no matter what terrible things are going on in our world or in a particular industry. You can always find something else to sell. Someone else is making a lot of money. And if you know how to sell, and if you know how to market, and if you know how to be a rainmaker and generate leads, then, you've got the world at your doorstep. You can do whatever you want to do. So I've been very lucky in that regard, Nina.
Well, I remember, as I read your story, you said you were making $40,000, $50,000 as a high school senior. You looked at the superintendent of your school who was making $26,000, and you thought, this does not compute. So you have
he had a doctorate. I remember He had a doctorate, and it was right. I was going to go to Kent State the year of the of the tragedy that they had there in the shootings, and I decided not to go. And but yeah, I look back at that, and it seems like in some ways yesterday, and in some ways I realize, my gosh, it was 50 years ago.
Yeah. But the principles that you learned, you also talk in your book a lot about having a mentor. And I would think those three guys that you just talked about, and maybe some of Zig Ziglar and all, were probably mentors in your life.
They were, and I've always looked up at people and copied them. I'm a big copycat. Dan Kennedy calls it swipe and deploy, but I'll look at people that are doing things, and I'll say to myself, why are they so successful? Why do two attorneys graduate from the same law school and have the same credentials, and then 5 years later, one is making $100,000 a year and the other's making $1 million a year? And I've always wondered, why? What makes one different from the other? And we could talk all day about that, but I think a lot of it is to have a role model and have a system in place and just do it. Dan Kennedy wrote a book I think it was called Just Do It. And so many people are thinkers and they're not doers. So anyway, but that book.
Do you think they're afraid?
I think they are afraid. I think they are afraid to a point. They're afraid to fail. And I've never been afraid to fail. I'd much rather try something and fail than always think coulda, shoulda, woulda. How would things be different if I would have done that? And so I've been a risk taker, and I've paid the price at times in my life. And I've made some mistakes, but I've had far more hits than I have misses.
Yeah, and at one point you were living in a 17,000 square foot mansion in St. Louis that you paid for cash with 13 bathrooms. And then you ended up buying for cash Kenny Rogers' house in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I left St. Louis and moved to Las Vegas, and we bought Kenny Rogers' house, who just passed away a few months ago. And I got to know him very, very well. I have to tell everybody here that if you learn one thing on this call, learn my favorite saying from Kenny Rogers. We became pretty close, and Kenny said, Rick, he said, you only need three things to be happy. He said you need something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. He said if you have those three things, you'll always be happy, and I'll never forget that. So when you mention Kenny Rogers, I always have to pass on those words of wisdom. But I reinvented myself, and I came to Las Vegas about 25 years ago and did a financial services business and wondered, what am I going to do from here? And kind of kicking in to the sales that I've been involved in for the last 13 years, I got attracted to the medical field. Someone here in Las Vegas had a little ad for a niche medical clinic, and I guess it's okay to mention what it was, Nina. It had to do with erectile dysfunction. And I didn't have that problem. And I thought, boy, this is an interesting little ad. And it's in every day on the sports page, and it's always on page 3. That's kind of weird. It's never on page 2 or page 5 or page 6. It's always page 3. And I thought, well, you open up the paper and your eyes go right to page 3 of the sports section. And it talked about a guarantee, and I'd never heard of anything like that. And so I went in and met the fella, and he wouldn't even talk to me. And about a year went by, and he finally did. And I persuaded him to consult. Here's my mentor, find a mentor. And I offered him an amount of cash to help me open up a clinic in St. Louis, Missouri, with a doctor friend of mine. I'd lived in St. Louis. And so we opened up the clinic in St. Louis. And the doctor said, my gosh, doctors don't advertise and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, get ready. And he said, well, Rick, I guess you and I partnering are kind of a marriage. He said, this is where marketing meets medicine. I said, yeah. I said, I don't know anything about medicine. I said, science was my worst subject, and I can't stand the sight of blood, anybody, yet alone my own. I said, so I'm not. I said, but if you teach me, and here's another lesson, Nina, if you teach me just a little bit, just a little, that's all I need to know to sell it. You don't need to be an expert to sell something. You just need to know enough to make the sale, just a little bit of knowledge. And I've always been pretty good at taking complicated things and making them simple. So he said, okay, we're going to open up. And my friend that got us started in Las Vegas ran that terrible little ad and was running that little business. And I only think big. I'm thinking we got to make this huge and go nationwide. There's nothing like this. So I go back to my encyclopedia of marketing techniques, and I think, well, what about risk reversal? What if we could run an ad saying that if you have prostate cancer, if you have diabetes, if you can't take Viagra, Cialis, or Levitra, if you're an old man and you haven't had an erection in 10 years, come into our office and see our doctors, and we're going to give you a free test dose of our special medicine, free, right in the office. And if you don't get an erection, there's no charge. And my doctor partners, oh my God, how can we do that? I said, you and I both know the medicine is 98% success. He said, yep. I said, if you line up 100 men, 80 years old, they haven't had an erection in 10 years, they're going to get one with our medicine. He said, well, that's true. I said, so why not tell the world? So I'll never forget, we went on KMOX radio, which was a news talk show, and Rush Limbaugh had never run an ad for ED. This was just brand new back. And they finally agreed. And we went on Rush, and we went on Sean Hannity on the radio back then, and we hit the St. Louis newspapers, the Post-Dispatch, and we got 80 or 90 phone calls the first day. We went nuts. And the clinic did $80,000-$90,000 the following week. These clinics were cash, by the way. There was no insurance. It was all cash. And it was sales and marketing. And my friend, the doctor, said, you're right. It's all about bringing patients in the door. As good as your medicine is and as good as the doctors, and we had real MDs, it's all about bringing patients in the door, all about making it rain, getting leads. And I said, you're right. So that's how it started, Dinah. It started with those ads, and it started with risk reversal. And the ads that we ran were advertorials. And people say, well, that's not even an ad. It looks like a little magazine story. It looks like a little newspaper article. And it was always a compliment when the newspaper said, an ad like this, we're going to have to put the word advertorial up at the top in tiny letters. And it was, thank you very much. People would call up and answer the ads. And they would say, I saw the story in this morning's paper. And that's when we knew it was working. And, of course, they knew the word advertorial. We wrote it. It was a paid ad, but yet it looked like a news story. And that was another marketing lesson for those that are on this call. To me, I can tell you that that's the most effective form of marketing out there. And that's kind of, the result that you get from your magazine tear sheet, isn't it, Nina?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. So, we took those clinics, and I worked with that doctor, and he passed away from cancer. But we opened 5 or 6 around the country. And this was tough because I had a beautiful home here in Las Vegas and a wife and had a son. And here I am on the road living out of a hotel. I was traveling first class, but yet I was away. How many people on this call would be willing to do that? For millions of dollars, cash in your bank, would you be willing to be away from your family 330, 40, 50 days a year? And you're talking now about paying the price. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die. So I'm living out of a hotel. My wife visited me every few weeks, and for the summer we'd get together. But I literally had to learn this business. I had to, bloody my nose because I hired the doctors. I ran all the advertising myself. I did not use an ad agency. It was very time-consuming. But when I was away from home 7 days a week, working 12 hours, I didn't have anything else to do. So I learned that business. And that doctor passed away, and I came back to Las Vegas, and another doctor and a group of investors, they said, would you like to keep going? And I says, well, yeah, and we did. And I opened up 15 clinics for them and traveled the country. The only good thing about the travel that I did, Nina, is that I was in a town for weeks or months. So it wasn't like I was one night here, one night there. I'd get a beautiful little suite in a hotel, and I'd be there for several weeks or months. And it was kind of nice. And I really went to almost every city in America doing this. And then a doctor in Birmingham, Alabama, answered an ad. We're opening up a clinic, and here we are in the Bible Belt running ads for sex. I'll never forget, we'd roll into Memphis and Birmingham and these southern towns, and they'd say, we can't run ads for sex. And man, come on, this is the Bible. And then within 2 days, the ads would be all over the papers. They'd change their mind. They wanted the business. We rolled into Salt Lake City, and the biggest paper there was owned by the Mormon Church, the Deseret News. And they said, absolutely not. So we went in the competing paper, And then 3 days later, they said, okay, we'll take your ad. I guess it's a medical condition, sex, God wants you to be happy. And there you go. We did unbelievable in Salt Lake City. We hired a Mormon doctor and a Mormon staff. And the LDS work ethic is phenomenal. And the doctor said, Rick, he said, this is probably the most gratifying form of medicine I've ever seen. I said, why are we doing so well here in Salt Lake? He said, well, we Mormons only do two things. We're kind of boring people. All we do is eat and have sex. I said, well, there you go. But we took these clinics nationwide. But this doctor in Birmingham said, Rick, I don't want to go to work for you. I want to become your partner. And he was upfront about it. And he persuaded me very quickly to relocate. And we moved from Las Vegas to Orlando, Florida. And he and I, he had gone through some financial hardships. And we pooled together $7,000 each and opened up Orlando and built that to 14 clinics. 3 years later, Nina, and this is all in the book, we did $37 million cash in the door. The third year, $37 million. And the first 2 years were pretty spectacular. But the third year, we did $37 million and had $8 million net profit. It was just he and I. And then that business later was taken over and evolved, and there you go. But that's and it's all sales and marketing. It was all innovative things that we did to make that business work. It was all about bringing in leads. And then while we were in Florida, my wife suffered a severe traumatic head injury. She was in her, back then, she was, I think, 41 when it happened. This was 5 years ago. And she had brain surgery, and this is in the book, and they gave her zero chance to live through the night. That's what the ER doctor said. Zero is not a good number. And I said, you got to be kidding. There's got to be something. Anyway, they did brain surgery, and she lost her memory. But now the good news, she's recovered. Here we are 5 years later. And by the grace of God, she's in great shape and doing well. But that caused me to leave Florida and to dissolve my interests in that business and move back to Las Vegas so that my wife could be with her mother. And here I am back in Las Vegas. So now what am I going to do? And that brings us, Nina, to what you started this call with, how 52 people paid $100,000. And the medicine that we used involved a needle. And men don't like needles. You don't want a needle in their penis. And we had a little applicator that it looked like a flashlight. Again, this is innovative marketing. Because when I went in the business, I said, we can't use a needle. Nobody's going to do that. So we researched and found this it looks like a flashlight, a little push-button device. And you touch it to the penis, push it, but you don't even feel it. And the medicine goes in. It was unreal. Within 3 minutes, this patient has a full erection. 90 years old. Men would cry. They'd break down and cry in the office. It was a very emotional sell. And then they would do this at home prior to sexual activity. So the needle, but not everybody would do it. And so we closed some. We obviously we did well. If 14 clinics did $37 million. And we had tremendous reorders because they had to keep reordering this custom medicine. And so I came back to Las Vegas, and my old partner said, Rick, the newest technology is no needles. And I said, look, I'm taking it easy. I'm just glad my wife is alive. We're laying low. And I said, no needles? He said, yeah. I said, seriously, no need. He said, yeah, it's something called acoustical wave therapy. Sound waves can open up the blood vessels. And I said, does it work? He said, I think so. I've researched it thoroughly. I said, you make sure it works. So he opened up a little clinic here in Las Vegas and came back 6 months later and said, it works. We run hundreds of men through, and it's a $4,000 ticket. I've always liked big tickets, Nina. I've always felt if you can sell something for $50, it takes the same amount of time to sell something for $50,000, and that's so true. So we opened up that first clinic, and it did well. And I said, what am I? I really don't want to go back on the road and open up a chain of clinics. And this comes back to what you opened with, Nina. We decided to create partnerships with entrepreneurs, and we did 52 in 1 year. And they paid in $100,000. It was highly profitable, and we did it in 1 year, and opened up clinics where they ran it, and that's kind of what I've done recently, but it all comes back to marketing, and bringing patients in the door.
And so you actually So you did you have to go and travel all over the country to do those 52, or were you able to?
No,
to do it?
Never left town to do those 52.
If I recall the story, there was even somebody who wanted you did area exclusive, correct?
It was area exclusive. Yeah, I had one gentleman who wanted Houston, Texas. I said, I'm sorry, it's gone. We can only put one in each market. He said, one in Houston? Do you know how big Houston is? I said, I know, but you only have one Rush Limbaugh in Houston. He said, well, that's true. You only have one major newspaper in Houston, and that's how you get your leads. I said, so we can only do one clinic in Houston. And he said, well, you don't know how bad I want that. He actually moved his family to Seattle to open up because it's a true story. One man bought 6 cities, paid us $100,000 6 times. We had an airline pilot who opened up a clinic in Phoenix, Arizona. He got us $100,000 back the second week. Where can you invest a business and get all your money back the second week? And he said, where else is available? And I said, well, we're going to kind of keep Las Vegas to ourselves. He said, well, I want it. And he took it and paid another $100,000. He's here in Vegas. And here I am. I hear people say how bad things are with COVID, and I understand they are for certain industries. But, this morning I was on the treadmill, and there's the Today Show, NBC, and there's the ad for his clinic right in the middle of COVID. And it's a $5,000 treatment that he's selling. So, someone's making some money, and someone's buying it. And I learned a good thing about being involved in a product that has emotion, something that people want during good times or bad. And right now during COVID, from what I hear at least, there's a lot of sex going on. And from what I hear, there's a lot of people that would like to have sex. People are home. And that drives, I think, the ED clinics. And I got to tell you, nobody likes to think about their grandparents having sex. But there's more sex going on in retirement communities than we ever want to think about. Look at the Villages, that community in Florida. Number 1 in America for STDs. The average age is like 81. Unbelievable. And so older folks, and God bless them, but they do want to have sexual activity, and they will do anything to get that part of their life back. Money becomes almost non-consequential. And that's what drove those clinics and still does, and still going very strong today. Cities like Dallas have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ED clinics, not to mention all the doctors that do it on the side. It's a big market. It's a big, big market.
So if I recall, the 52 that you sold were not necessarily doctors. Is that right?
That's right. I learned early on, God bless the doctors, you can't live without them. But I learned that most of them are not good business people, and they're not going to part with 10 cents to a marketing guy unless they have to. And, quite frankly, they don't get it. They still challenge themselves with marketing and sales and leads versus the medical education that they got. My partner, Dr. Kevin, who you interviewed a couple weeks ago, is the rare exception. He understands. And so I decided I don't want to partner with doctors. I just don't. I'm looking for entrepreneurs who can hire a doctor. And so people would call up and say, I want to open up a clinic in Nashville. And I say, well, you have to have a doctor, but don't worry, we'll get one for you. And they say, oh, my God, how am I ever going to get a doctor to go to work for me? I'll say, well, can you give me 3 hours? And I'll have one tomorrow morning. Seriously. Yeah, you're in Nashville? I'll have a doctor at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And we had sources and resources, and it's very easy to hire doctors on an hourly basis if you know how to do it. And so that was not an obstacle. And but yeah, we chose to partner with entrepreneurs, and they in turn would hire a doctor to go to work for them, and it worked out really well.
And so they probably had limited hours too, so it was a lifestyle business as well.
Yeah, the doctors loved it. They'd get their hourly rate, and they'd come in and and work a couple of days a week, and it was just a great deal. It was a great deal for everybody, and they could write prescriptions as needed and do histories and physicals and hang their license on the wall. And if they got sick, we get another doctor. Or if they want to take a vacation, we only needed about a 3-hour notice to get a doctor. Of course, we had to get a certain type of doctor. We advertised all male staff. That was a big one to get everybody to understand that we could not have females working in the clinic. Men are real embarrassed about ED. I had a lot of men say, the only reason I'm coming in is because you said it won't be any ladies there, because I'm real embarrassed about this. Because these were World War II guys, Vietnam, crusty old veterans, and a lot of them are really embarrassed. And so Rush Limbaugh used to say all male staff, and people used to really like that. So we were looking for a certain type of doctor. But back to your question, though, yes, we were looking for entrepreneurs, and they could easily have a doctor go to work for them.
Now, I think it's kind of segued from there. Are you still selling those kind of, or have you moved on to something else?
I've moved on. Right now, with COVID, as you know, you've been a part of it, but the last 6 months or so, my doctor partner, Dr. Kevin, and I have put together a new treatment where we can actually treat patients over the phone, and it uses telemedicine. And we've gone into the weight loss business, and it's brand new as of just a couple weeks ago, but we've launched, and we now can treat medical weight loss like you can't imagine. You interviewed Dr. Kevin about this a couple weeks ago, and also sexual medicine, and we can do it from home, where a patient doesn't have to go into the clinic. And that's one of the positive things, I think, that will have come from COVID is that people are more reluctant to go into the doctor's office, and it's opened up the doors to telemedicine. And people are willing to get treated over the phone if they can. And fortunately for our two products, weight loss and sexual medicine, we've also gone into the female market to help older ladies, which is a huge market. So now it's not just men, but we also help ladies get their sex life back. But we're doing it over the phone, and we can do it in all 50 states, which is great. So it's brand new, and it's a huge opportunity. Anybody on this call that's we are looking for someone to take it over and run it for us. So at the end of the call, we'll give out my number, and you can let me know if it's something you have an interest in.
Well, Rick, that's the question. So are you looking for somebody to give you $100,000 and they have their own area, or are you looking for tell what you're looking for?
Right now, we're looking for someone to help us with the marketing and take it over, because we've really created a monster, and it's so big that we just don't know what direction to go. But we'll be launching it real quick, and so we're looking for people that might get involved in that. And frankly, I'm always looking for clients. If there's anyone on this call that has a unique business they're involved in, or something unusual, or a business that's already successful in one city and they'd like to take it nationwide, that's what I do. That's what I do. People come to me that have something that's unique, highly profitable, a little unusual, and they want to go nationwide. And they don't necessarily want to franchise and go all the conventional routes and have all those headaches. And I consult with them and help put those kinds of things together. So I'm always looking for clients.
So as I read your book, we talked about unique. The definition of unique that you talked about, it might be a common product, but it's delivered in a unique way. Or it could be something else. Talk a little bit more about uniqueness. I guess
uniqueness goes back to the marketing gurus that talk about unique marketing propositions, unique selling propositions, USPs. What makes you different than all the other plumbers? What makes you different than all the other marketeers? What sets you apart, Nine, I think, is your products. You've got some really unusual niche products, which is great. But you have to have something that makes you unique. I'll give you an example using the ED clinics. When I researched it, I found out that the idea of the medicine 13 years ago had been around for 25 or 30 years. It was not new. Any urologist could do what those ED clinics did 13 years ago. Any urologist could do it, and a lot of them were. The medicine was not proprietary. You go to a compounding pharmacy and they can all make it up. Our formulas became proprietary because we had 4 different medications and we had 300 formulas, and our doctors developed it. And they had to do a history and physical of the patient to determine what medicine to give that patient, to give that gentleman his erection. So, there was nothing special about it. What was unique was our marketing and our advertising and our risk reversal. Being able to say, wow, if you don't get an erection, it's free. Imagine how profound that is to an 80-year-old man who hadn't had one in 10 years, and his wife dies, and he's lonely. He thinks his life is over, and he gets up one day and looks in the mirror and says, hey, I'm 74. I'm not that old, and I want to be happy. And he gets on Facebook and meets his old high school sweetheart, and her husband passed, and then they get together. That was our market. So how do we reach them? And here we are running an ad, and they'd call up their doctor. Can you do it? No. Well, there's an ad. I know. I saw the ad too. I don't know what they're doing. Go on in and see. So then they would come in and see, and they'd find out we had a board-certified doctor there, an MD, and we treated them with respect. And they would come in for a free dose of medication, and then immediately look down, and they've got a full hard erection. So they're saying, wow. And they'd walk out of the door an hour later and drop $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on their MasterCard. So, it was that process of building the trust from the ad and the way we handled the response and the appointment, the way we treated them, the building that they went to, walking in the door. It was all those little things. And I was a part of it. When I would open up a clinic in 30 days back in those days, Nina, a partner would come to me and say, I want to open up, pick a city, Detroit. I would have a system where I could fly into Detroit to an empty office, and the furniture would be there the next day, the phones would be in there, the internet would be hooked up, the newspaper, and with less than 30 days, sometimes 3 weeks, money would be coming in the door. And rarely would we do less than 80 to 100,000 the first week. The unique formula for the ED clinics, and this is a lesson for everybody, is that when our ads first hit, we got all the low-hanging fruit. Always remember, nothing is old if you haven't seen it before. Medicine's been around forever, but if you never knew about it, now you see an ad and boom, they line up. We have $50,000 days, cash in the door, one day, and it's mostly profit. Just, the cost on the medicine, the markups were astronomical. And they could have gone to a urologist and got the exact same thing we had for a fraction of the cost, but yet they came to us. And that goes to specialization. I always like businesses that have a niche. All we did was ED. That was it. We didn't do anything else. And I always thought that it was nice to be in a niche, to do just one thing. People like specialization. If my cell phone goes bad, I want to go to one of those you break it places that only works on cell phones. I don't want to go to Best Buy where they do that and they do 89 other things. I like specialists. I've always been that way in my marketing and in my personal life. I like people that specialize. There's a big billboard here in town of a divorce lawyer, and all he does is work with men. And that's it. And his whole advertising campaign is based around men that are going through a divorce. Why would you want to why would you want to hire a divorce lawyer who also takes female clients when you can hire one that only takes male clients? And he has a whole marketing proposition that explains the logic behind that. And I thought, well, that's brilliant. But getting back to your question about unique, I guess my definition is different than all the others. That's what makes you stand out.
Is there times when you've seen a product, though, or a service from somebody and they couldn't identify what was unique, but you could see it and help them go into that?
You bet. I had a client many years ago who did tax returns and wanted me to get involved. And we sat down for 2 or 3 hours. And then just as an afterthought, he said, also on the side, I'll audit someone's last 3 years' tax returns. And if I find any mistakes, I'll split it with them 50-50, the refund. And it was like a light went off. I said, whoa. Say that again. Well, just as a little side business, he said for a new client, I'll say, bring in your last 3-year tax returns, and I'll take a look at them. And if I can find that you overpaid, whatever refund you get will split 50-50. And it was like, whoa. It was like the world opened up. And that he went on and became very, very wealthy in advertising that. And so, yes, there are a lot of people that have what Dan Kennedy calls the Renoir in the attic. And you've heard that, and I'm sure most of the people on the phone call have heard that. But why would someone pay $300,000 for a house and someone else would be willing to pay $500,000 or $600,000? It's the Renoir in the attic. The average buyer may not know there's a Renoir painting up in the attic. And if you know there is, and that's part of the deal with the house, then who knows? You're going to pay whatever it takes. And of course, our feeling is that most businesses have a Renoir in the attic. They have a hidden gem. They have a hidden little USP, something different in their little business. And they're too close to it, Nina. They don't realize. They need someone on the outside like me or you, a savvy marketer, to come in and say, wow, do you have any idea what you're sitting on? And then there you go.
So let's go back to the ED clinic. So you sold the 52. You're not doing that, but you've partnered with Dr. Kevin now, and you're still doing ED. But is now because of COVID, you're going to be doing it, you said telemedicine. So now you don't even have to have physical locations.
That's correct.
Am I right?
That's correct, but we're still developing our mode of operandi, if you will. We're still not quite sure. Do we want to open up little offices and put somebody in Denver and give them the rights to these 2 medical treatments? Even though it can be done over the phone, I'm still kind of on the cliff here, or on the edge, if you will, as to maybe we need a local office in Denver, just as a base of headquarters. So right now, that's in development. The hard work is done. We got the product. You and I know. We've spent 6 months putting it together. The website's up. Everything's ready to roll, and now it becomes a marketing issue. How do we want to go about doing it? But, and for that, I think 30 days from now, we're going to know. But right now, we're in that developmental process.
So you talked about weight loss and, of course, ED, but you're thinking about the possibility of combining them under one umbrella, whether it's a local business, or local office, or whether it's telemedicine, whatever that, in 30 days, what you decide.
That's correct. And the website is under one umbrella. The website, Doctors Medical Clinic, Doctors, DOCTORS, dash medical, MEDICAL, dash clinic. That website, that domain, the homepage talks about doctors have 2 revolutionary niche medical treatments, weight loss and ED, and then a patient can go in and open up either one.
Interesting. And so what you'd like to do is you'd like to find somebody who's a real marketing savvy person to take that over and help grow that whole business.
That's right. Yep, we're open to talk to people right now, and we are leaning in the direction of going back and opening up offices around the country with entrepreneurs and giving them the rights to the 2 medical treatments in their city. So we haven't quite decided yet which route we're going to go.
Fantastic. I want to read something that's on page 98 of your book. It says, I'm proud to say that I've never partnered with somebody in the last 35 years who didn't become a millionaire in the first year of our association. I don't know of anyone else who can make that statement. That's pretty profound, Rick.
It really is. And I went back to all my partners, going back into the 70s. And I remember a lady that I partnered with in Joliet, Illinois, who had a little unique service business. And, we hooked up together. And a year later, her goal was to have a brand new Rolls Royce. I'll never forget it. And she had that car. And she was a character. So all the way back, I thought about that. And I said, wait a minute. Everyone I've partnered with has hit it big, and that can be a double-edged sword, by the way. You sometimes create monsters, but they've all become millionaires. And it all comes down to customers and getting clients. And all the businesses that I've been involved in over the years, I'm not an expert. I know only a little bit about all, and some of them were highly complex and highly complicated, but I knew enough to sell the products, and that was all that really mattered. I knew how to get leads and how to market, and that's what it's all about.
Having talked to you for a number of years, you don't seem to be chasing the shiny objects like a lot of marketers. You stay with the fundamentals, the basics. You talk about newspapers still. You talk about magazines still. You talk about TV, radio. Talk to me a minute about that.
Boy, I wish I could have back all the money I've blown on social media. I wish I could have back tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've blown trying to get leads from Facebook and from social media and online and search engine optimization. And I know there are people that are becoming, zillionaires doing it, I guess. And I look at these companies. I mean, look at the two big ED companies right now, Hims and Roman. They were valued by Wall Street a month ago at $1 billion each. I guess they're going to do an IPO this coming year. And all they sell is Viagra. And they only sell it online. And try to get a hold of them. You can't. It's all digital. It's all online. And I pride myself in the fact that, we answer our phone and people call us up and they get a live operator. And but going back to what you said, people say, for instance, let's take newspapers. Are newspapers scarce? Yes, they are, and it breaks my heart. Are they a dying breed? Yeah, but I don't think in my lifetime, if I'm lucky enough to live another 20 years, I think we're still going to have newspapers. I opened up yesterday's newspaper, Nina, and the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and I read the paper. I read 5 papers a day. Not online. I get my news with papers, and because I like to clip the ads out and this and that. And here we are, the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I open up the paper, and it's all ads for older folks, for baby boomers and seniors. There was a full-page ad with Tom Selleck with his reverse mortgage deal. Okay, and then a few pages. There's Joe Namath, who I've used twice. Joe's a great guy. I know him well. I hired him twice to do videos for him. There's Joe Namath, and he was pitching some kind of Medicare deal. And further in the paper, wow, a 2-page ad for a hearing aid company. Whoa, 2 pages. For a hearing aid. There's 2 ED ads. There's our old clinic that we had. Yep. And here's another one. And I kept going through the paper. Wow, here's a half a page ad for the stair deal for old folks who can't walk up the stairs. That's direct sales. That's a $30,000 product. And here's an ad. Oh, wow, here's another big ad. Look at this one. This is for those bathtubs that people, for old folks who want to take a bath and they can't step over. It's got a door that opens up and you can walk into the bathtub and it seals. And that's a $10,000 direct sales deal. Where just like Encyclopedia Britannica, the sales guy comes to your home and he closes you. Okay? So are newspapers dead? Try to tell that to all of those companies that are rolling in the money with newspapers. And what about radio? Radio is still strong. Television is still strong. So, analog marketing is still stronger than ever. How come Google uses direct mail? How come I go to my mailbox and get brochures from Google? I mean, it must work if they use snail mail. And I'll give you a case in point. When we started selling these $100,000 deals a few years ago, I thought I'd be cute and just, email all the information. So here I am, $100,000 sale, and I'd pitch a guy, and then I'd send him an email with all the digital info. And I call him back a few days later. I never got it. It must have gone to spam. Or I forgot all about it. I'm thinking, what an idiot. So I rush to the printer, and I have everything printed, beautiful color, coded stock, beautiful envelope, and I started in sales immediately, quadrupled. People call me up and say, man, I talked to you a week ago, and I got your email, but then I lost it. Or they might say, I didn't print it. And even if they did print it, most people don't have a color printer. And even if they do, it's not going to be uncoded stock. It's not going to look nice. It's not, what I'm saying. And when do most people do their serious reading? Usually sitting on the toilet. If it's a man, what's he going to do? Take his laptop into the toilet and sit down for an hour and read all my literature? Come on. Of course not. He's going to glance at it and then forget about it. But then 3 days later, he gets this beautiful shock and awe package, my gorgeous color literature, and he spreads it out in his desk or on the kitchen table. So, again, I emphasize to those that are on this call, yes, it's true we live in a digital world. Yes, it's only going to get bigger, but please don't neglect the analog. And shame on you if you're giving information to your clients only by email and digitally. Shame on you. You've got to go to the post office and mail beautiful color copies of everything if you want your sales to double. You got to do it.
Well, we started this whole conversation by trying to explain visually what this book that you had me put together for you is like. The one thing I didn't say, and it just reminded me, is you were even very specific of the quality of the paper. You wanted like a 24-pound paper. Very nice. I mean, everything about this says high-end, says expensive, says this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, image is important. You want something really nice. You'll notice you call it a book and I call it a book, but it's really not a book. I'll never forget when I first came out with this about 15 years ago, the product that you're talking about. I paid Ron LeGrand, our friend, $10,000 to learn, how to sell from the platform. And I flew, and he did it at his house. And I think he sold 100 people for $10,000. And one of the speakers was Dan Kennedy. So Ron picked up $1 million for 2 days. We're in Jacksonville. And I came back with the fact that I got to have a book. But they told me that you don't want a book. Books are a dime a dozen. You're not going to make any money, number one. So the only reason you would want a book would be to have an image, to be able to give it to someone and, show yourself as an author. But then Ron LeGrand said, Rick, what you really want is a toolkit. Toolkit. I said, I like that word, toolkit. He said, yeah. He said, go out and record a bunch of audio CDs back in those days and put them in a big album and it'll work. So I did that. And I sold about 800 of them. And they sold then for $600 or $700. And I sold them to a niche market that I had. And then it just sat there. And then a couple years ago, a friend of mine from London, England, a client, his name is Paul Stone. We had lunch, and he said, Rick, that book of yours was brilliant. People from England love to use the word brilliant. Everything's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. He said, your book was brilliant, or your toolkit. I said, you still have that? I said, that was 15 or 20 years ago. So Ricky, he said, I get it out and listen to the audio CDs at least once a month, every 2 months. There's stuff in there. And then he started reciting things to me from the old toolkit that I had long forgotten. And then I got to thinking, well, wow. So I went back and listened to it myself. I'd forgotten about it. And then I called up Nina, and I said, I want to make it into an actual book, not just the audio CDs. And then you were nice enough to compose it, and we had it printed and came out with a toolkit. And then I found out that CDs are passé now. And I remember 8-track tapes and then cassette tapes. And I remember records when I was a kid. And now here we are now. It's all, MP3. It's all digital. And I said, how do you even listen to an MP3? And someone said, what, are you crazy? Every new car in the last 10 years has a little plug for an MP3. I didn't know that. I'm old school. So I said, okay, I need to do MP3. So I took all these audios, 6 hours of them, and in the front of the toolkit, the book that Nina's talking about, there's a little slot, and you pull out, and then it looks like a credit card. You've seen it, Nina. But then if you push it and open it, you've got it in your hand. And that little credit card has an MP3 built into it. And then so there you go. So it's all about innovating. And but yeah, for those of you out there thinking of writing a book, try to make it a toolkit. And now you can, instead of $20, you might charge, I've got a $400 price tag on my toolkit. And I'm not even looking to sell them. I just give them to potential clients for credibility so they can know about me and my methodology. But toolkits are far more profitable than books.
Well, Rick, this has been fascinating. And I'm looking at the clock and we are out of time. But I know for a fact that there's going to be somebody that's listened to this that says, I got to talk to this Mr. Rick Neiswonger. So if they want to talk to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Best way is my cell phone,
702-285-1111, or email rickn, R-I-C-K-N as in Nancy, 13, rickn13@gmail.com. And I promise I'll get back to you.
Man, that's amazing, because I can imagine you probably get a lot of calls. Well, thank you, Rick, for being here. I'd like to close with this. This was from Kenny Rogers. You said it earlier, but I thought it was a terrific close. So you only need 3 things in life to be happy: someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. This is Nina Hershberger. Until next time, go and make it a fantastic.
Thank you for listening to Megabucks Radio with Nina Hirschberger. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or to listen to past episodes, visit megabucksradio.com.